Welcome in, builders. This week we are looking at the min, the myth, the meme, Mictlan. Much joked upon, made fun of, dying to literally a random event on turn two, Mictlan. We're going to see if we can give them a W. They need it. We have not had but maybe one stream in all of early age that Mictlan did basically anything, and we have had several streams where they've either just instantly got killed by somebody or just died on their own and didn't even need help with that. So win or lose, we will drown the world in blood as Mictlan, the Reign of Blood. Mictlan is an ancient tribal empire that has been isolated for centuries. The foul practices of the priest kings of Mictlan have caused most of their neighbors to leave or face slavery and blood sacrifice. Since the dawn of the kingdom, blood has been spilled in the temples of the capital to feed the waning powers of the hungry god. The armies are mainly composed of slaves from newly conquered lands. The mage priests of Mictlan celebrate the two faces and the two dominions of the hungry god, namely the sun and the moon, the rain and the forest. They are skilled blood mages. As for national features, we are comprised of humans, and we prefer a heat scale of +1. Our military is light infantry, and I would say up to maybe medium, with slings and javelins. We have tribal kings that can levy slaves, and we have sacred jaguar and eagle warriors. Our magic is pretty darn strong blood, pretty good fire, astral, nature, and water. We have at least a 2 in each of those pathings. You will note, while we are pretty good at what we do, most of those mages are cap only, and we don't have anything else. We do not have a lot of diversity beyond that. Now, I would argue that having 5 paths that you're pretty good at is pretty good, but again, a lot of those are only coming out of the capital, so that is a strong limiting factor for them. Our priests are powerful. We have up to our High Priest of the Sun, who is a Holy 3. We have several Holy 2s, and we have spammable Holy 1. So our priest coverage is pretty darn good, which is great because we do get a ton of sacreds. Our priests can perform blood sacrifices, and our dominion does not naturally spread unless blood is sacrificed. So for a normal nation, for every temple you have, you get a temple check. And if you make your temple check, and that's based on the strength of your dominion score, you get a candle. And then that candle tries to spread. Maybe it's into dominion conflict with another candle, or it just increases one of your non-maxed out areas. For us, that is not the case. We only get our god, the guaranteed spreads, and our prophet. If we don't have a god or a prophet, our dominion does not spread unless we do blood sacrifices. We'll talk about blood sacrifices and we'll look at them a little bit later, but that is very different than any other nation. So it's something you need to keep in mind. And it allows for an interesting strategy around scales, which again, we will talk about in a little bit. Speaking of scales, for scales and blesses, we have a turmoil limit +1, which means we max out at order 1 or turmoil -3. We get heat limit +1, so we could go up to heat 3 or down to cold 1. And we get 3 extra bless points. That means that if we spend no points in pathing, we still could spend 3 bless points. That is not the rarest thing, but it's not common either. There's only a few nations that get extra bless points. For buildings, we have no discounts, and we only get primitive fortified cities, and these are pricey. These are 1,200 gold. On the bright side, once you build that initial structure, you do not need to build a second one. So for a lot of nations, it's 1,000 and then 600, or 1,000 and then 800, just depending on whether you're building giant cities, fortresses, castles, etc., etc., etc. On the downside, they're not very good. On the bright side, they build quickly at least. I'll give them that. For sites, we have the Temple of the Land, which gives us our Priest Kings, our Eagle Warriors, and we get a Nature Gem. We have the Temple of the Rain, which gives us Rain Priest and a Water Gem. Temple of the Moon, Moon Priest, and an Astral Gem. Temple of the High Sun, our other cap-only sacred, and our High Priest of the Sun, along with 3 Blood Slaves and 2 Fire Gems. So we actually end up with pretty darn strong income here, because we get 1 Nature, 1 Water, 1 Astral, 2 fire. So right there, that's 5 gems plus 3 extra blood slaves. Now we may or may not need to spend some of these on raising Dominion, but it is noteworthy that we have a quite good gem income. Next up, let's take a look at our units. Now, one of the problems that Mictlan has throughout the ages is we are not a society that is advancing. We have stagnated completely. So our equipment, while in the early age is already primitive, for later the ages of the nation, it doesn't improve. And that's a big problem later on. In this age, it's not a strength for sure. It's definitely a weakness, but it's less of a gap between us and some of our junk equipment and people who are using iron or even steel, if we're talking about Ulm. For troops, we have a couple different varieties of very similar troops. First up, we have the warrior. He has a stone spear. So note we're at like caveman level equipment. And we have a sling at range 30 that is not very accurate. For defense, we only wield a hide shield. Of note here, though, 9 gold, 1 resource, 7 recruitment. You can just pump a billion of these guys out. And they do have half a siege defense, and they have a ranged weapon and a shield. So if you need to defend a fort, just 100 of these guys, 200 of these guys isn't terrible. It gives you something, and at least they can shoot during the fight, so that is something. And they do come with forest survival. Is it relevant? Probably not. Since this is kind of sort of the equivalent of our militia, I'll give them that they have morale 10. That gives them something there. Otherwise, pretty unnotable. Next up, we have the warrior again. This guy I prefer much over the other. For 4 extra resources, we get some Mictlan armor, and we get a leather cap. This takes his protection up to 10, which is pretty good. So in archer duels, you won't suffer nearly as bad. And as noted with Roos, we have slingers, which admittedly are not the best. At least in early age, not everyone's wearing a helmet, so you got that. But we have a spear. Now, we are definitely not as good as the Roosian hunters. However, having a spear on ranged troops mean you have a chance to repel when things get to you, which actually makes them a lot more survivable than they otherwise would be. With only 10 attack, we're not great at it, but it's notable. It's something at least. These guys are actually usable to help expand. Because they are so dirt cheap, you can pump out 30 or 40 or 50 of these. 50 slings will do something to, like, up to medium-ish troops. They're not going to be good. Let's just get that just right out of the way. They're not good, but they could do something. They are pretty decent, actually, against barbarians. You can pummel them on the way in. Sometimes you get lucky and they just rout on the way in. And even when they get to you, you at least have repel chances, while the rest of your slingers can throw rocks into it. So that is something that they're actually pretty decent against. Next up, we have Warrior again. This is the same guy, but he has traded out his sling for a couple javelins. Again, notable that these are not very precise javelins, and this is just a human, so no extra range, no extra damage. These guys are okay. We're now up to 7 resources, though, so we're getting a lot pricier for a bare-bones human chassis. I'm not in love with these guys. Next up, we have Warrior again, and this time he has traded his spear for a mace. I would love to hear from people situations where you think that blunt damage in general, but more specifically, a length 1 attack 10 mace would be useful, because I'm not particularly seeing it. The odds that you hit a human-sized person in the head is not that high. A spear has a better attack on it because it is piercing, so you will get through the armor with a better chance. I don't know. I don't know why I would want this guy. I suppose if you're fighting something that is resistant to slashing or pierce, that is a situation that could be good. We're still only at that base 10 morale, so we're not like super resilient or anything. We don't have a lot of HP or strength. I'm not loving this guy. Next up, we have the Moon Warrior. Now we're at least into something interesting. So again, human chassis, very similar. Now we're up to Mictlan copper scale armor and a bronze cap. So now we're up to protection 13. So we're solidly in what I consider medium infantry for the early age. We do have dark vision, and in Dominion 6, having dark vision is pretty good. Going underground is totally viable. You'd love to get some of the stuff down there. So this is something that I think is a strength of this unit and gives it a purpose. Beyond that, we also have an obsidian club sword. So these are like the, what are those called? Not machakas, whatever they are. The wooden club that has obsidian shards in it. This is a pretty good weapon. It is two-handed. It is a length 2. So now, while we can still get repelled by spears, now we at least can repel some other stuff or not be repelled by some stuff. Our attack goes up to 11, which is pretty good. That means that just bare bones infantry, we at least have a even to better chance to hit. And damage of 19 with slashing is pretty darn good. You'll probably get through armor. Slashing will increase the damage once you do so. Maybe you get a lucky blunt hit on the head and just squish somebody. These guys are okay. And again, the dark vision gives them a purpose. If you had to hack your way through semi-low defense, big HP things, these guys are better than our other troops. Next up, we have the Featherless Warrior. This guy is notable for being a standard. Having a standard with your troops gives them an additional +1 morale. I do think these guys are useful, especially if you're not using the sling troops, because they'll stay with the troops. And the extra morale would be appreciated, because we are only morale 10 on most of our basic troops. We are again using the Mictlan copper scale and the better gear, although only a leather cap. So he ends up with 12 protection, which is all right. You're never going to mass these guys because they do cost 18 gold and 21 recruitment points and 14 resources. But at least they have, again, a purpose. I should note, going back to the Moon Warrior, he does cost 15 resources. So as a generic, just this is what I'm recruiting, probably not. I think I would rather have 3 of the crap guys than 1 of these guys. But when you need something that this guy can do, he's a better choice. All right, next up we have 3 sacred units with Mictlan, and this informs a lot of what Mictlan is about. We are about sacred things, we are about blood, and combining those two. So Eagle Warrior in this age is our cap-only recruit, one of 2. What's interesting about Eagle Warriors, when they are blessed, they gain flying. So hold and attack rear with Eagle Warriors, who have a length 3 bronze lance. Note it is a lance, you get that first strike bonus, and it's length 3, so you're going to be repelling, and a length 0 stone dagger. And they're still only size 3. So you have pretty good attack density at 6 attacks coming out of a square, and you have some repelling. They do have some protection, not the greatest. They don't have a penalty to their defense at least, and their attack is 11 and 12 respectively. These guys are pretty interesting. Junk troops in front to hold the line, hold and attack rear. Depending on what your bless is, they're pretty killy or pretty survivable. I like these troops. Next up, we have our second cap-only sacred. Unfortunately for this guy, I think the Eagle Warriors always win. A bronze hatchet, he does come in with good attack and decent damage on that. He has that 13 protection. He's wearing our like high-tech bronze gear, copper bronze gear. But he's a human sacred that doesn't have something crazy going on here. Fire resist is nice. I'll give him that. But otherwise, I think Eagle Warriors in this age will always beat out Sun Warriors for me. Next up, we have our Recruit in Forts with Temples Anywhere troop. And the Jaguar Warrior is pretty darn good. He has our Obsidian Club Sword. So he has big old 20 damage on that. He's wearing a little bit of protection again. His big claim to fame is he transforms into a Were-Jaguar if he takes too much damage. The Were-Jaguar form has 18 HP, and he goes up to having the 3 attacks, all at 12 attack and between 15 and 13 damage between his bites and his claws. Of note here, it's all length 0, so you're going to have issues with getting possibly repelled, although at 15 morale, he can usually push through and he'll just take that poke damage. But it is something to think about, like, you are going to be taking repels. This is a pretty good recruit anywhere sacred, especially in the early age, because things are not too heavily armored. His damage is good enough that even for medium infantry, he can fight it. However, only having 5 protection is a pretty notable weakness, and we don't have any innate forms of regen or health gaining. So that is something you need to consider for your bless. How are you going to fix that? Next up, let us look at Mictlan's commanders, and I'm actually going to start with our heroes here, so I don't forget. We only get 2 heroes. They're both pretty decent. We have the King of Legends. He brings in Death, which we otherwise don't have. He is a Holy 3, and he's undead, and he's a Reanimator Priest and a Reanimator bonus. So you could summon in Long Dead through Ritual, or you could summon them in through Reanimator Priest, and he'll have a bit of a bonus to that. That is vaguely interesting, because we could use those as patrols for our blood hunting that we're going to do. Otherwise, not overly notable. You definitely would want to keep this guy safe. He only has 40 HP and he's undead, so I think people would be looking to banish him or something like that. Does have great morale. Next up, we have the Eagle Priest. Again, he brings in 2 air magic, so again, something that we do not have otherwise. Other than that, though, again, he's probably just going to be a guy that does some site searching or does some crafting for you. 2 air is not going to allow you to do any big air stuff particularly. You'd have to empower him to 4 before you could start crafting big boosters. Nice to have, but not nation-defining or anything like that. Next up, let's look. We have a Scout, 35 gold, 1 resource, 1 recruitment. He comes in with Mountain Survival, Forest Survival, and Stealth, so he's a pretty bog-standard Scout. Great to have your own National Scout that you can get. Unfortunately, he does not just come in on any location. He is still only from our forts, which is a big downside. I really wish he was recruited anywhere. Next up, we have Tribal Kings. These guys are interesting. They are a cheap at 125 gold, 15 resource, 1 recruitment point, 100 leadership. So we have good leadership, which we definitely need. Our junkie troops need the bonuses we can give them, and having formation helps out quite a bit. He is sacred, so he can get your bless. He is wearing some armor, no shield, however. And he has a javelin, so that's all nice stuff there. He has the Forest Survival. He's a Taskmaster +1, meaning that if he's leading slave troops, they get an additional morale bonus, so that he would give them a +2. And he's a Slaver. So what you can do with these guys is you can give them an order to capture slaves. Let me find one in my game here. Right here. So we could capture slaves, and you'll get a medley of worse than militia troops. Why would you care? Well, they're either things to stick inside a fort to hold the walls up very, very cheaply, or use them to patrol down your blood hunting unrest. So it also causes unrest to get them, so you're going to be killing off population, essentially, if you want to go down that route. I do think they're viable as patrollers, but you just know you're going to spend time doing that. You're going to have to collect them, you're going to have to get them. It's not just a super free thing. Next up, we have the Mictlan Priest. This guy's pretty notable. He has Blood 1, and he has a Priest level 1, just automatically, and he has a small 10% chance to get Fire, Water, Astral, or Nature. And you'll probably get a lot of these guys, so you'll see a sprinkling of those. Do they really change much about him? Not really. Maybe the Astrals could get into your Astral Communions rather than into a Sabbath if you're doing something. Otherwise, It should be noted, we have 7 research. We have 7 research, and we only cost 36 gold a year. So we are actually incredibly efficient researchers. However, you're going to take a long time, because you can only get 1 of these per turn per fort. So you're going to take a long time to build up that research. Magic scales would help. Adding an additional 1 or 2 to your research here would make them really efficient. Like, really, really efficient. But then that means you have to spend the design points on that, and you're not getting something that maybe would help your bless or shore up another area. Also of note, as of recording, we just had a patch where we added Grand Communions. These basically, if you do them in your capital, they're for certain nations that have sacred mages, and for everyone that can join that Grand Communion, when you cast a ritual spell, it adds to the ritual strength the same way that adding extra gems would. That means for dispelling or for casting, let's say it's normally a 40 strength spell, or 40 strength ritual out of the bat. You can add these guys in there to raise it up. So I believe they add 1 per level of their, I believe it's priest level. You can add like 10 of these guys in there, and that'd be a 50 strength spell. So This is brand new. I haven't actually done it or tried it, but I think this is going to be a pretty big thing, mainly for dispelling more than anything else. Being able to get really strong dispels that you don't have to pay full price for, or guess how high they need to go, is pretty darn strong. These guys may also end up having to help you blood hunt, depending on how your economy and the game is going. Next up, we have the Nahuli. This is a very good mage for us. He shapeshifts into a turkey. Unfortunately, the turkeys are not stealthy, which, I don't know, turkeys can be pretty stealthy. But that means he can fly, and it just gives him a second shape, which is always appreciated. They also have Spirit Sight, so maybe a unit that can help lead some of those Moon Warriors underground. They come in with 1 Astral, 2 Nature, and they have a 10% chance to get Astral, Death, Nature, or Blood. These guys are quite good. 2 Nature means that you can do your Bark Skin spells up to group Bark Skin without having to do any shenanigans, which is pretty important, I think, for this nation. I think Bark Skin really helps us out. And we have Astral for various Astral buffs, including Body Ethereal, and communing up to do bigger nature things in battle. So we could look at Howl or Relief or things like that. Big Barkskin buff spells. Pretty darn good. The fact that they can fly also means that they're a little more mobile than some of your other mages. They're not super expensive, at only 175, although do note these are not sacred mages. I like these guys quite a bit. This is our recruit that we can get mage-wise from non-capital forts. So if we check here, I can get my priest, or I can get him. In our capital, we get the full slew. So while this doesn't maybe look to be the most impressive guy, he's the one you're going to be able to recruit outside of the capital. So you're going to be using him. So figure out how you want to do that. Next up, we have 4 mages that are all good, and they're all cap only, unfortunately. First up, we have the Rain Priest, Water 2, Blood 2, Holy 2. He has the new Grand Communicant, and he has 13 Research. Now, the 13 Research is still very efficient. He only costs 98 gold per year. 245 is a bit pricey for the recruitment, but it's all right. These guys are pretty nice. What they will allow you to do is join Sabbath to get water in there. They will allow you to cast Rain, which can be very helpful if you're fighting people that are using lots of fire magic or have heat auras. They can do various water spells like Cold Bolt, etc., if you're fighting things that would be weak to that. They can buff your guys with quickness, with liquid body. Lots of use there. Of the mages, maybe this guy's maybe the least useful. We'll see as we look at the other guys. Maybe he has a tied person. He's not a good leader. He can do some magical leadership and some undead leadership, though. Overall, it's nice to have a water, too. That's a useful level of water. Next up, we have the Moon Priest, and I find these guys very valuable. Having an Astral 2 mage means you can quickly research Thaumaturgy 2 for Mind Burn, which is very accurate and has 100 range. Throwing 2 of these guys with an expansion party, because our normal troops, frankly, do not expand very well. So you might struggle to expand. Having 2 of these guys with an army means you can get several Mind Blasts off before the lines even connect. Once they do, you can still be Mind Blasting, and that will be accurate kills against human troops. They also could do lots and lots of Body Ethereal buffing. And then later on, we could look at things like summoning in horrors. Could be quite nice for them. Very useful. Also, they do have Dark Vision. So again, another mage that could help you underground. A lot of things underground have elemental resistances. So being able to hit them with some Astral, maybe target some weak magic resist that some of them might have, could be pretty good there. I really like Moon Priests. Next up, we have the Priest King. This is kind of maybe the questionable guy in the fact that he's a much more expensive cap-only Nature 2 mage. So if you're just looking for Nature 2 things, I think you go with the Nahali. However, he also has 150 leadership, which is a +2 to squads and Taskmaster. So if you're leading slave things, that's a +3. He is a slaver, but I wouldn't waste his turns doing it. Use your other guys to do that if that's what you're going to do. He has a priest level 2. He has a Grand Communicant. So pretty good. If you're going to put up, if you're going to boost somebody up to do nature rituals, he's your man because he could use that Grand Communicant ability to boost the power of it. I do like these guys. I would use them to lead armies. Just note 325 cap only. That hurts. He is wearing an iron cap for some reason too. So good on you, man. Finally, we have the High Priest of the Sun. The High Priest of the Sun is a Fire 2, Blood 3, Holy 3. He does unfortunately come in at old age. I don't think this is an argument to take Ageless or Half Dead on this nation. It's just not worth it for one guy. And you could get away with having him just cast priest spells, which don't have fatigue. But he'll probably do your big bless. He'll probably do some courage if nobody else is around to do it. And then he can switch to do some fire stuff. Do note that Fire 2 is enough to Phoenix Fire, which means that you can climb up to Fire 3 super easily and cast some pretty big fire spells in combat. So that is quite nice. You're going to want some most likely to do your big blesses. So again, you're going to need him. He's not as good of a leader, however, and he's exceedingly pricey at 425. So I do get some of these guys, especially once I get the Sacred recruitment rolling. It's just way better to be able to just ensure everyone's getting blessed right away on turn 1 before anything can happen to you. And having the fire gives him some versatility. So that is appreciated. It should be noted, no armor on I believe any of these guys I just talked about. So giving them some sort of crafted piece of armor, they would appreciate that, I think. They are pretty darn vulnerable to taking just whatever out of the blue. So something like Enchanted Ringmail, it's not particularly good, but maybe, I don't even want to speculate. Something would be good for them. They would like some sort of protection. Otherwise, you need to buff them with probably Barkskin or some other protection spell, because those are pretty pricey mages. It sucks losing cap-only mages, even if you can get them every single turn. Should be noted that none of these are slow to recruit, so you at least have that going for them. Next up, let's look at national spells, and national items. I think we're going to start with the national item. Our national item is the Jade Knife. This is actually a pretty important item for us. It comes in at Construction 3, I believe. Check myself here. Yeah, lesser magic item. And what it does is it raises our sacrifice bonus. Normally, you can only sacrifice a number of blood slaves equal to, I believe it's your priest level, not your blood mage level. They tend to be the same, though. So let's say you're using a blood 2 priest level 2 mage. You could only do 2. This will allow us to do up to 4 per turn. It is 5 nature gems and 5 blood slaves, so it's not cheap, and it's not a particularly good item for fighting. You're taking it for that sacrifice bonus. Let us double check. Okay, so this guy, if we were to take him and perform blood sacrifice, only one person per temple also, so you can't just spam people to do it. So that is what we would have to do. You give them some blood slaves, they will sacrifice them. If they have the knife, they can do extras. This can be pretty powerful because while you don't normally want to push your scales out, we'll talk about why. Here's a hint. Why you don't want to push your scales out. You die if you lose all your Dominion. Or maybe you want to try to Dominion kill other people. So you have a high Dominion strength, you build some temples near their capital, let's say, and then you blood sacrifice really, really, really hard and just wipe out their candles really quick. And they won't be expecting it. It won't be like when you're slowly seeing your Dominion shrink. It'll be like all of a sudden somebody's pushing out like 10 temple checks right on your border. So that can be pretty powerful. Next up, let's look at our national spells. We have quite a few of them. Let's look at through Conjuration first. We'll first just look at the spells, then we will look at the actual units. From Conjuration, we have Jaguar Toads, we have Jaguars, we have Jade Serpents, we have Monster Toads, we have Coatls, we have Tiloks. Sorry for the slaughter there. So quite a few different Conjuration ones. Let's take a look at those. Oh, I actually see a mistake in our favorite mod here. They are not showing our first toad. They are a small toad that is poison. I believe they do have a poison cloud around them. They can be kind of useful, but with all poison clouds, be careful about the friendly fire. Next up, let's look at the Jaguar. This is no Russian bear. I'm just going to say that. He is sacred. He is undisciplined as an animal. Notable for being stealthy, and we maybe could do something with that. The downside to him is, to get him, it's only, again, Conjuration 3, same as the bears. However, it's a Nature 2 Holy, which we do have, but it's 20 Nature Gems for 25. So you're not going to be rushing this, because even to get to 20 Nature Gems, we only have one income normally. So you'd be looking at turn 20-ish before you would have the gems if you weren't doing alchemy or found a bunch of sites. And they're not particularly great. That being said, there's something to be said about 25 sacred units that you can just summon in. So I think they might be usable. You may consider that there are other uses for nature gems. Here he is. That would be more useful. Speaking of that more useful unit, the Kawaddle. This is a pretty dang nice unit. He comes in straight with Astral 3, Nature 3, Holy 2. Now, right away, that means he can cast Anti-Magic on turn 1 by himself. That's huge. We do have a lot of blood summons, which means they are demons, which means people want to banish them or do other horrible magic save things to them. So getting Anti-Magic up really quick is quite nice. He has a huge map move, and he is flying. All great things there. Should be noted, he is cold-blooded, so you may not want to go for cold scales if you're planning on using lots of these guys. They also have no armor, and his slots are pretty limited. So you're going to need to either buff him or give him something that gives him a little bit of armor. That being said, he has good leadership. He is inspirational. He is a magic being, so he is vulnerable to certain things that other things are not. But for 40 nature gems, I would definitely spend 40 nature gems for a mage of this caliber, for sure. Next up, we have monster toads. Mainly, you would get these guys if you're interested in the poison cloud, and you're going to do something with that. They are sacred, and they do have a huge poison skin. So against Link 0 weapons, they can poison things. Is that good? They are tramplers, so that does mean that they will trample into the enemy and then spread around their poison cloud. That can be interesting. If I was going to try to use these guys, I think I would go and try to use a spell to enrage them myself right off the bat, so that they charge in and hopefully poison things and then die before my line gets there. Or alternatively, maybe you take some poison resist on your Bless and you mix these guys in. That could be something kind of unexpected. It's always good to be unpredictable. Next up, let us look at the Tolok. That spell brings in 4 different guys randomly, north, south, east, and west. Each one has various magic abilities. So 4 water, 2 nature, 3 blood, 3 priest. This guy's some fire and water. This guy is water and death. This is interesting because that could give you Stygian Rain. That could be interesting if you take a magic weapon bless. And we have another air guy. Because the spell only costs 4 water, and we do have water 2 mages, who you could get to water 4 relatively easy, and we don't have tons of other things to spend water gems on, it could be worthwhile. Always nice to get strong mages that you can summon in. Pretty good there, I would say. Jade Serpents. Jade Serpents are interesting in the fact that they are banners. They have the standard ability. We have troops that already do that, but these guys have a lot more HP, so if you went with like a regen bless, they have a better chance of maybe staying alive. It should be noted they only have 12 protection and they're really big, so they're going to push their way to the front. They're so big they're not going to share a square most likely, and they don't have good attack density or anything, so these things tend to get hacked apart, unfortunately. Next up, let's look at our blood magic spells. We get Beast Bats, we get Jaguar Fiends, which are the Ozoatls, very good. We have the Contact Civateto. Interesting, but we can't really do it easily natively. We have to get something summoned or a hero to do it. We have the Bind Titamil. We can do this one natively. We'll look at this one. This one's kind of interesting. We have the Contact Talopabuchi, and we have the Contact Onaki. And Reign of Jaguars. Reign of Jaguars is just a better summon of Jaguar Fiends. Let's take a look at all those units. First up, we have the Beast Bat. This is a unit that is shared by some other Blood Nations. Zabulba comes to mind. This is a pretty decent unit. It comes pretty early. He is Sacred, of course. Flying, stealthy demon that is blind. So he is not affected by darkness or being blind because he doesn't see. He has Venomous Fangs. They're attack 11, and they have fatigue damage, paralyzed damage, which maybe is interesting. I'd say of our blood stuff, least interesting, but they're cheapish, so that can be nice. And later on, when we summon in Onakai, these guys auto-summon in those bats, so you may end up using them even if they're not the best thing, just because they're free spawn. Next up, let's look at the real star, I would say, from this list. This is the Ozyotl. These guys are great. They are a size 5 flying sacred demon. They come in with 3 attacks at 13, doing between 18 and 16 damage. These guys are monsters. We have seen them on several nations. Strong blood nations tend to get something to summon these. Early on, you only get 3 of them per cast. Later on, with the Reign of Jaguars, I believe it's like 20 per cast. But these are totally worthwhile. They are quite strong. They have 33 HP, which is nice. Good attack density, despite the fact you're only going to have 2 per square. They're still getting out 6 attacks. Enough HP that you could regen or just fight through it. Of weaknesses, they're demons, and they only have 6 protection. And not stellar defense either. So you're going to want to think very hard about what kind of bless will benefit all these troops. And mainly, I would say, your Eagles, your Jaguars, and your Ozyotls are what you want to think about for your bless. Next up, let's look at the Civiteto. Could be interesting here. You need that death magic to be able to summon her in. She has a life drain attack. She is stealthy and ethereal. I don't know. I wish she was an assassin. That would really make her much more interesting for me. I guess she is a reanimator priest. So if you do get that cross-pathing and you get a couple summoned, you could just use her to get more long dead to help you patrol. Other than that, though, yeah, kind of whatever. I don't think that's the main star of this show. The Tahulapuchi, very similar. She is an assassin. However, she changes into a dog, which isn't a great form. She doesn't have a ton of HP. The shapeshifting makes it hard because if she shapeshifts, she's going to lose her gear. She does give us an assassin, so we have that option. And as far as human-ish ones, they're not bad. Death and Nature are okay for assassins. Nothing to write home about, I would say. Probably you won't see too many of these, to be honest with you. Next up, let's look at the Titsazimil. This guy is pretty interesting. He's pretty strong. He's got 43 HP. Again, Sacred Demon Flying, kind of standard for us. He's got a pincer attack, a scorpion tail attack, and he has a ranged attack, Stellar Bolt. Range 55, it only costs him 5 fatigue. It's armor negating, and magic resist for half. So that means you're going to hit pretty dang hard, since the base damage is 18, and I believe that is buffed by strength because it's a natural attack for some reason. So if you were doing strength buffs, that would be even further range, and it would give you extra damage. That's pretty nasty attack. These guys are pretty spooky, and if something does get to them, they're fine in melee. So they're interesting. Again, you probably don't see too many of these guys. Finally, we have the Onakai. These guys are really good. They're pretty high, so I don't know. I feel like there's a lot of other fields of magic that you need to get to. So going high enough to get this guy early enough is hard. But if you do get there, he is a Dominion monster summoner. He summons in bats. He starts with bats if he gets into combat. He is a Sacred Demon Flying. He's got Priest, Blood 3, Nature 1, Death 2. That opens up that death pathing for you, and you can get that via I believe just blood. Let me double check that, because that is pretty important. Yeah, Blood 4, which we could totally do. That's not too hard. And Blood 4 will get us into the death, which opens up those other things we've been looking at. So if you want those things, that's a way to do it without going via your god. I think their big claim to fame, though, is if getting enough of these going, that you have enough free spawn bats to do something with. So, pretty good, pretty good. We don't have any combat magic or other non-summony rituals. However, I think it is worth noting there's a lot of good spells that we can do with our pathing. Of particular note here, I would say Blood Fecundity. We can cast this natively with just recruitable mages. And for 10 Blood Slaves plus 1 per month to make it last longer, you can up a province's growth by 2. That means you could either take death scales or a minor amount of growth scales and boost your key provinces up with this. We're going to be trying, hopefully, to build a very strong blood economy, so you're going to have that rolling anyways, and this will just help keep those populations up and keep your summonings in. As mentioned before, Jaguar Fiends are those Azotls. These guys are huge. I could see an argument for rushing Blood 4 just to get some of these guys out. Now, how many of these would you get if you rush Blood 4? I don't know. You're not going to have that good a blood economy. We only have a natural income of +3, so it's not going to be getting tons and tons of them. You need to be out doing blood hunting to get them. But they're very powerful. It's a very powerful unit. Other things of note, as mentioned, Thaumaturgy 2 unlocks Mind Burn, which I quite like for the Moon Priests. It opens up our communions for several of our mages. That can be pretty good. Construction 3 gets us to our Jade Knife, 5 to the Sanguine Dowsing Rod, which is very important for us at some point. I do like an early Evo 2. That will unlock Cold Blast for our Water Mage if you happen to have one. Solar Rays can be very good if you are fighting undead things. Gives you Web, which is a pretty nice nature spell. Also gives you some fire options for your fire mages. Alteration is another key one. I would argue maybe the most important. We have lots of things that just don't have enough protection. So getting up to Bark Skin, or preferably Group Bark Skin, is a major jump in survivability. That would also open up Body Ethereal. Body Ethereal is exceedingly good, and we have several mages who can do it, if not super efficiently. This would also give us Swarm. Swarm is still pretty powerful, and various amounts of self-buffing with other things. Conjuration can be nice. At Conjuration 3, that would give you elementals. We have several different varieties we could use. It gives us Phoenix Power, which we can use to bump our Fire Mage up, and Summon Jaguars, which may be worth considering if you get to 20 Nature Gems and would just like a big group of Jaguars to attack something with. Could be pretty good. Also in here, Fire Ants could be interesting. They are just kind of chunks of HP, but we don't have good line troops, so just having things to block for you can be pretty dang nice. Otherwise, you might summon in things to help you patrol for your blood hunting. Maybe summon animals, get some wolves via that. Maybe you go with Vinemen for something. Wolves are even better for doing patrol chaff. You get 15 plus. That can be pretty good. Yeah. Going beyond 3, though, at least in the early game, I would find hard to justify. If I was going to do it, I think it would be mid or late game when I'm looking to get a Coatl. I would probably go up to 6 for that. Otherwise, I think you take Evocation to Taste. Enchantment can be interesting. Because we can mass slingers, fire arrows is actually pretty good for us. 100 slingers with fire slings are way more deadly than the equivalent without. And we can cast this natively. You would need to Phoenix Power and then spend a gem, and you could get the size 20 version. So 2 of our cap-only fire mages could pretty easily do a whole line of slingers. That could be pretty nice, especially if maybe you take a little bit of fire resistance on your Sacred Flyers. So your Sacred Flyers fly back, distract things, and then the fire comes out and you just burn everything down. Okay, so let's bring all of this together. We are a nation that is not technologically progressing, thus we have pretty junky troops. However, in the early age, that has not yet become a significant gap in ability. We have a strong flying, cap-only, recruitable Sacred. We have a recruit in any templed fort, recruit anywhere, relatively strong shape-shifting Sacred. We have blood summons that are Sacred, and we have some conjuration summons that are Sacred. We get an extra 3 bless points. We have a cap-only non-slow to recruit Holy 3, and decent mages in the capital, all of which are sacred. We have a very efficient but slow researcher, and we have decent leadership. What I think this all goes together, combined with Dominion does not spread unless blood is sacrificed, means this is a nation that you want to take absolutely garbo scales so that you can buy a very strong bless. Let's jump out of here and let's look at Pretender design. Mictlan gets the, I believe there's the Aztec culture group Titans and creatures. They're okay. They have some interesting ones. What I do appreciate about them is they actually have some pretty not huge variety, but some variety, more than some culture groups get for different magic pathing on their unique stuff. You are definitely going to be looking at some sort of Hellbless, most likely. So it really comes down to what is the cheapest thing I can take that gives me a huge amount of bless points. You also need to decide if you need an Awake Expander. Mictlan does struggle to expand. It's not particularly good at it. So this is a nation that I think could benefit from an expander. Now, of note, an expander usually needs certain things. Like you probably need some way to regen, and you need to get somewhere in the neighborhood of 25 plus protection to be safe. So you have to weigh that against what is going to be good as a bless for my sacreds. So like Earthsnake here, kind of his classic thing is you would take him and you would take Hardskin, and maybe that's all you need. Yeah, we need to spend at least 6 here. Maybe you take that and like that's enough nature to, what would we get with that? Maybe some poison resist and maybe a low light vision. Maybe make all of our sacreds be able to go underground a little easier. This would allow him to do personal regen. The extra hard skin gives him 6 extra, so we're going to be looking at 29, I think, with the earth bonus. So that would be pretty good. However, this bless is kind of mediocre. That's not much for your sacreds. Other than that, though, I think you have tons of very viable options. Monolith is good. The Geyser's good. You could meme it up with the Colossal Head. Blood fountains, all manner of very good things. Blood and Death have lots of good blesses for us. We'll look at actual blesses here in a second. The Demi-Lich is a very cheap guy for a Dominion 3. Mini blesses absolutely love him. Various different Titan forms with various different pathings. Of note, the Teto Inan, I think, is pretty interesting. She comes in with a 2d6 horned serpents in battle, and her paths are pretty decent. You could go something larger, you could go regen, you could go hard skin, you could go enchanted blood, you could go blood search. I think there's a lot of options here that she gives. She also has a good blood searching ability, so that might be able to catapult yourself into your early blood economy. So Wake Expander, you carefully expand with her, and then as your research gets to your first like major blood summon, maybe she switches over to doing some blood hunting to kind of boost that. You also have an interesting guy here in Smoking Mirror. He's only 90 points, and he's got fire, death, and blood, all of which are good paths for different blesses that you might be interested in. I think this is a nation that could maybe use Righteous Wrath. That is, when a sacred unit dies within range 2 of you, you get 3 attack, 6 strength, and 3 attack, 3 strength, and 6 morale. The morale is actually really interesting here because we have non-berserking sacreds that have length 0 weapons, which means you're going to get repelled. And the extra 6 morale, I believe, takes Jaguar Warriors up to like 21 morale or something dumb like that. So A, you're not going to retreat, and B, you're just going to ignore getting repelled. You'll take the damage and just hit them anyways. So that could be kind of interesting. Because we are a heavy sacred nation, we would like to have resistances. I'm not going to go over each individual one, but resistances would be good for us. Attacks are good for us. Strength is good for us because we have lots of multi-attack sacreds. Other things that are quite interesting, weapon attacks. Because we end up with 2 or 3 attacks on a lot of our units, having a weapon attack can be pretty powerful. Also, quickness. This is a nation I do feel quickness is very good on. Jaguar Fiends with quickness means that they will have 12 attacks per square if you have 2 of them in there. So with an extra 2 attack and 2 defense, that's pretty darn nice. As mentioned, we struggle with defense, though, and protection. So something like Hardskin might be interesting to try to keep yourself alive. We don't have recuperation, so maybe even something like Unbreakable. Ethereal might be interesting. Fate Weaving could be interesting if you're going to go with Weapon Blesses. Undying is very, very strong on Shapeshifters, as our Jaguar Fiends or our Jaguar Warriors are. So Undying is very, very powerful here, especially if you combine it with Regen or Enchanted Blood. Stygian Flesh is a hard one. We can cast Barkskin pretty well as a nation, and they don't stack. You get the higher of the two. But I think the best expansion bless I had was using Stygian Flesh, but I also feel like it wears out once you can start doing group Barkskin. So I'm not entirely sold on that one. Even Fear, it's very pricey, but we have so many Sacreds that are pretty tough and can stay around in a fight. I would consider Fear even. Because we're going to Hellbless anyways, this is a nation that maybe I would consider poison weapons on even. Maybe we take Death 1 and we Blood Fecundity up to Growth 1, so we negate that. And poison weapons have 5 poison damage. That is not insignificant amounts of poison. Berserker could be interesting. Now, unfortunately, all of our mages are sacred. Well, all but one. So you would be risking that, but it would be very nice for a lot of our sacreds. Barkskin, I feel, is a waste because we can cast that relatively easily. Regen, I feel, is very, very strong because of our ability to have high HP sacreds that are summonable. The usual glamour stuff that is strong could be good here. I don't know if I would take like the blur type stuff because we don't have very high defense to start with. You really kind of want to combine the two there. But maybe Awe could be interesting. Maybe Dread could be interesting. It's a slightly cheaper Fear. However, Blood, I feel, is the real standout here. From Blood, Enchanted Blood gives you half a regen of each round, so basically 1 every other round, and +1 magic resist. That's very, very good on demons. Demons really suffer from anti-demon spells, and the extra magic resist will help. So they'll have not only that, but hopefully you can get anti-magic on them too for a +2, which greatly swings your ability to resist. Also, if you do take Undying, Undying stacks very well with Regen or Enchanted Blood, because if you regen back up, you don't die. Can be pretty nice. Blood Surge is excellent. We have a lot of units that have 3 attacks. That's a ton of free stats there. Could be very, very powerful. Blood Bond, I'm not sold on it on this nation. The reason being, if you end up fighting near any of your mages will die from the shared damage. We also have a lot of different sacreds that all have various different HP pools. So what might happen is your big HP guys are sharing really, really big hits with low HP guys, and it just kills your low HP guys. So I'm not in love with that one here. One I'm trying so hard to make vampiric weapons a thing. Vampiric weapons are frustrating. The problem is, if your attack kills the target, you don't proc vampiric weapons. So, in a lot of battles, you'll see something get hit, it will proc vampiric weapons, but the first hit killed them. So you don't get the life drain. When the life drain is working, though, man, it is strong. It is really strong because it heals HP and fatigue for your unit. And you have 3 attacks on each of your units. So you could be getting a lot of HP. However, you need to be hitting things and not killing them for that to happen. In practicality, I'm not sure it's worthwhile. I'm going to keep testing and trying to make it work. We'll see what I can do. Let me show you a couple guys I have tried. I've deleted quite a few here too. This is Big W. He is my hopeful pretender, but I'm not sold on him. I'm really struggling to expand with this. He takes Undying 5, so you get an extra 10 negative HP. That is huge for your Jaguar Warriors because that means they have like 20 something HP on their first form. Then they go to a Jaguar and they have like almost 30 HP. The idea is that you use that to buy time to use your vampiric weapons. But in practicality, I have guys that go full to dead and never get a vampiric weapon to go off. Combining that, I took Fate Weaving. Fate Weaving means they only get 1d6 on their DRN rolls instead of the usual 2d6 for defensive rolls. That's really big for getting weapon blesses to actually do something, because the problem with weapon blesses is the damage is usually too low to get through protection plus 2d6. So this makes it much more likely that our armor negating drain damage goes through, because they'll only be getting a 1d6 plus anything else that might be applying there. I don't know. I would be very curious to see if people have been able to make this work. There's not even been a lot of talk about it, which makes me think people have not succeeded in doing so. I know that I think Lucid and Battle and somebody else did a stream where they were trying to make it work in a Pretender game, a co-op game, and I think their result was like if I remember right. So I don't know. I would really like this to work though. He's awake. This is cool and different and fun, but I'm not sure it's good. Other things I have tried here. This is Catnap. He is an imprisoned god, so we took a wide range here. We took the Righteous Wrath, we took Unbreakable for the Affliction resistance, and we took Enchanted Blood and Blood Surge along with some resists. Decent but boring is kind of my thing here. That's his problem. Finally, of my saved ones, we have Twitch Meta. He's a geyser. This is an Awake, Quickness, Enchanted Blood, Blood Surge. These guys were okay. I didn't find them survivable enough, was the problem for expansion. The not having Undying and Blood Surge, I lost a lot of Jaguar Warriors, which is just going to happen. Like, you have to accept that, I suppose. They would certainly appreciate the regen, though. Now, we do have mages who are capable of casting group regen later on, so maybe we just struggle bus until we get there. Every time we get a new buff, this would make these sacreds much stronger. So early on, Bark Skin and Ethereal, and then later on, hopefully regeneration and like strength buffs from from blood could be pretty good. I don't know. Maybe I should just give up on the dream memes and make something with like regen. That could be something like, I think she would probably be the chassis to look at. So you'd be looking at regen and something from blood, and then probably use the earth to pay for the points. So this would be regen, blood surge. We'd have 4 points left. I would probably go Enchanted Blood. So this is something. So like, what would we do here? We'd go probably Order 1, Sloth 2. For Heat, we do have some cold-blooded stuff, so that leans me towards Heat. Heat 3 is a little dangerous because during the summer, maybe you get Heat 4, and that's pretty strong pop kill. You could go Cold 1. We don't have any snow move or anything, though, so I feel like that's a little on the weak side. I tend to move towards Heat. That pays for that, but then we need enough. Yeah, that's not too bad. Yeah, we leave a lot of points on the table here, though. 24 points is brutal amount of points left. I could see this, though. We could struggle bus a dormant on her, maybe. Maybe we go awake. This would keep things alive, and having the blood surge, pretty killy still. Other ways that maybe we could do this. Maybe we go dormant. Let me knock that back down. And we get some death in here. And we start adding in some Undying. Like, we could afford 3 off of this, and we could have 1 extra scale. I mean, I don't hate I don't hate that, right? Because we have 2 forms on the Jaguar Warriors, that's an extra 12 HP, kind of, sorta. And we do have really strong regen here, so we could probably make use of that. She would give us the extra magic scale, which would be nice for our very efficient researchers. We didn't take any death or anything, so that's a thing. Other things we could do here, maybe we abort on that, and we take a death, and we pick up poison weapons. So poison weapons, regen, we need some more points here. I'd probably drop Blood Surge there. So now we have regeneration, very strong. We have the extra magic resist for our demons, and we have poison weapons on things that have 3 attacks. That's pretty good. Our attacks are strong enough that we are definitely going to at least scratch things, so we can definitely get the poison checks. Poison also, remember, in Dominion 6, while you're being poisoned, gives you some stat penalties. So it's got a little bit of a debuff in it. This could be pretty interesting. In the beginning, though, you're only going to have poison weapons and enchanted blood. You won't have your regen for that first year, so I don't know. That could be kind of struggle bus getting your expansion out. And you do need to expand because you need to get out there to get some decent blood hunting territory, if nothing else. And you are kind of a rush target, so you need to at least not look weak, I think, is the long short of that. I don't know. I'm going to have to think more on this. This is a nation that I do need to do some more practice games and some more expansion testing before stream, because I'm not feeling confident on this. I'm stuck between things that are so ridiculously expensive that they cripple me, or things that are affordably priced but I'm not great at expanding with. So this is a instance where I'm very, very curious how other people expand and with what bless they use. So please leave a comment on that. I'm very, very curious. I'm very, very open. I am not... Usually when I go into these, I've kind of made my decision on who we're going to play on the stream. I have not made that decision this time. I would love to hear your arguments for your favorite bless/expansion. Yeah. We haven't ever, I don't think, done an imprisoned, so maybe we do one. Maybe this is the time to do it because of the way this nation works with their scales and whatnot. So, yeah, let's see how that goes. Okay, builders, that is going to close it here for EA Mictlan. Tune into stream to find out if we can finally get them a W, because they need it. Man, do they need it. They are just the jokes of our streams. And let's see if we can turn our memes into dreams and have Mictlan descend in a rain of blood. All right, I will see you on stream, builders. Take care of yourselves and build something cool.